All right, should we start now?
Sure.
Okay. So thank you so much for joining JAMA tonight for From Orientation to Match Day, Surviving and Thriving in Med School with Dr. Kira Rynhold and myself, Esther Boorstein. The Jewish Orthodox Women's Medical Association is a dynamic organization of over 800 Jewish Orthodox women in medicine, dedicated to personal growth and community service and advancing healthcare knowledge. Through education, mentorship, and advocacy, JELMA empowers its members and promotes health and well-being within our communities. Our vision is a Jewish community who has easy access to culturally sensitive and relevant health information and can make informed medical decisions. Thank you for joining us as we continue to support and inspire women in medicine. For more health topics, check out our upcoming webinars and tune in weekly to the JOMA podcast. So we're going to kick this off with Dr. Kira Rynhold, who is a resident in psychiatry, and you can start.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Kira Rynhold. I just started residency at Westchester Medical Center in psychiatry, and I graduated New York Medical College this past May in 2025. So I'm really excited for all of you. Maybe some of you are starting med school this summer. Some of you are maybe hoping to start in the next few years, just trying to get a sense of what the next few years are going to look like. So if you guys want to drop in the chat, like if you're starting med school, where you're going, that would be great, just so we can get a sense of who's going where, maybe connect people if anyone's going to the same school. I have a few slides. So I'm going to start off with the slides, but if you have any questions at any point, you could either post them in the chat publicly or message me or one of the Jewish Orthodox Women's Medical Association users on the Zoom. So, okay. So, oops. Okay. So the first thing I want to talk about is like what to expect over the next 3 to 4 years. I know that some schools have 3-year programs or are transitioning to have all their students be on a 3-year track. And every school is going to be different, but this is kind of a general sense of how med school works for most people in most schools. So the first thing you're going to have is your preclinical curriculum. So that's kind of like the most like undergrad that you'll have. You'll have all of your basic sciences courses, like anatomy, physiology, everything on here. And you also might have some introduction to clinical medicine. So for example, at New York Medical College, we have something called Foundations of Clinical Medicine, where we kind of learn how to do a patient interview and a physical exam and get to practice on what are called standardized patients and their factors. So that's typically anywhere from 1 year to 2 years. Some schools have transitioned to really shorten that preclinical curriculum to get students to the hospital as quickly as possible, but some are doing still, a traditional 2-year preclinical curriculum. So after that, you'll take step 1 or level 1 if you're in a DO school or both. This is a standardized exam that will kind of cover a lot of what you learned in the preclinical curriculum. Step 1 is pass-fail. So you just need to pass, there's no score. After that, you'll have clinical rotations. Again, every school has different requirements, but the general core ones are internal medicine, surgery, OBGYN, pediatrics, psychiatry. You might have family medicine, neurology. Some schools, I think, make you do anesthesia or emergency medicine. That's typically about a year. Then after that, you take step 2. So step 2 is very similar to step 1. But it's more on the clinical sciences, so everything that you learned in that clinical curriculum, and it is scored, and that score is very important for your residency. So then after that, let's say you've basically done 3 years at this point, or 2.5 years, and now it's time to kind of hone in on what you want to do specialty wise and do your sub-Is. Sub-Is or sub-internships, some schools call them, I think, AI, acting internships. It's a rotation, but you have a little bit more responsibility than a 3rd-year med student. Your fourth year, you'll also do electives, and the biggest thing you'll do is you'll apply for residency, and then you have match day and your residency training. So now kind of to zoom in a little bit, again, every school is going to be different, but day to day, I just like kind of gave an example of what you might expect in the preclinical curriculum and the clinical. So preclinical is going to vary based on how in person your school is, what block you're on. But typically you'll have, let's say it's the first block, you'll have anatomy lab in the morning, maybe a lecture, a small group, and then study at night. It could be that one afternoon you have off, or some schools are more would be jam-packed with lectures. Lectures would be mandatory, they might not be mandatory. It's really going to depend on your school. And then a clinical day, this will be like your third year. Again, it's going to vary on the rotation, but like a typical day in internal medicine, for example, they'll come into the hospital, we'll get the sign out from the night team. So that means that the residents who are on at night will kind of talk about what happened overnight and transition the care from them to you. They'll pre-round, you'll do rounds. I'll admit, I had no idea what rounds were when I started med school. But rounds can be anything from sitting in a conference room, talking about the patients, to just kind of standing around in a huddle for 5 minutes, going over your patients, to like going around and seeing the patients one by one, like going to their rooms. You might have lectures on your clinical rotations, and then afternoons, depending on the rotations, are typically a little bit more chill. You get some time to study. So studying in med school is a really different ballgame than studying in undergrad. I actually found studying a lot easier in medical school. It could be that I finally found the subjects interesting and relevant. So it was much easier and more interesting for me to study, pathology than organic chemistry. So every school is going to be different. Some schools are going to have in-house exams. In-house exam means your professors are the ones making the exams. Some schools are going to have what's called NBMEs, or National Board of Medical Examiners exams. Those are standardized exams in subjects, let's say like biochemistry, physiology, and those are a standardized test. Some schools have a mix of both, but it's really going to depend on your school, how often your exams are, and what the exams look like. But studying across the board is going to be pretty similar. So you're going to hear this word, if you haven't heard it already. I feel like you guys probably know Anki from undergrad or from the MCAT, but Anki is a huge thing in medical school. At New York Med, there's even like an Anki club. So what Anki is essentially, it's like digital flashcards, and it works really well because it uses something called spaced repetition, which is essentially, you get the same information every few days, every few hours, whatever it is, and that really helps you remember. Something else we hear about a lot is called Sketchy. Sketchy is great. It uses like fun little mnemonics to help you remember complicated concepts. And then UWorld. UWorld is probably the most important / thing I use the most in med school. You probably all know it from the MCAT, but it's like a question bank, and it's really helpful for step 1, as well as your preclinical classes if your exams are more geared towards step 1 material. And it's really going to come in clutch third year when you're studying for the exams third year. So third year exams are a little bit different in most schools. So your first 2 years, you'll be taking exams that your professors make, kind of like an undergrad for the most part. And then typically your exams third year are the standardized exams. So like everyone in the country is taking the same internal medicine exam or the same OBGYN exam. Not the same test questions per se, but the same material. And it's going to be like the step 2, step 1 style of question. You don't need to remember these now. Like I'm sure they'll come up in med school if people want to like do a group discount or if your school provides it for you. But just to talk a little bit more about studying, and this is kind of a theme that I'm going to talk about a lot tonight, is med school. It's really all about knowing yourself. So I came into med school studying like I did for undergrad. I didn't realize how important memorization was for anatomy. And so I actually got a 43 in my first anatomy exam. I failed. It was very disappointing. But then I got 95 on the next one. So it was a matter of like kind of knowing how to study it and knowing what worked for me, and like adjusting how I studied to fit with the school and what was going to be on the exams. So it's going to be like a process. You might get there and your study style works great for med school because you love to memorize and you love Anki. or it might be more of a learning curve. But definitely give yourself a little bit of grace, especially at the beginning, because your first exam is like going to hit you like a ton of bricks. Okay, and I'll take more questions about studying at the end, but we can just get through the slides for now. So the biggest question is, how do you manage your work-life balance, right? So before I started med school seemed like this all-encompassing, lifestyle that was going to completely take over my entire life. And to some extent it does, it's more than a full-time job. But at the same time, you're still a person. People get married in med school, they have kids in med school. I got to go on some great vacations in med school. So it is possible, but you're going to have to, again, know yourself and figure out what works best for you in terms of taking your breaks, the hobbies that you do, time you spend with family. But some really important pointers are to kind of figure out what your priorities are. Like if you really prioritize seeing family, then let's say, you can't, let's say, be social every single weekend or every single night. And so you might like choose a family event over a social event. Or for me, like I really valued going on vacation and going on trips. So I made sure to like do all my studying. So for step 2, for example, instead of taking like all 6 weeks to study full time, I like locked in for 4 weeks and studied really hard so that I could take those last 2 weeks to go on vacation. So, you'll learn more as you go about yourself and, especially as you start. But some really good advice I got once was like, if you don't take a break, your brain will take a break for you. So it really is important to schedule breaks. Some people I know will have a day where they don't study. I heard of people kind of not studying on Shabbos at all. It's not as a religious thing, but just as like I need a day to like let my brain relax. So much like undergrad, most med schools, or at least in my experience, my med school was rife with extracurricular activities. And as someone who loves extracurricular activities, it was really tempting my first week to like sign up for everything. But keep in mind, like I said before, the first month or even semester, year of med school is going to be a really big learning curve. So if your instinct is to like sign up for every single little activity that comes your way, maybe be more mindful and more intentional about what you're choosing. Maybe choose one thing or choose nothing for your first few months and just focus on studying and spending time with your family. Or if you're like me, and I do better in classes when we have like other outlets to, use my creative faculties, then you might want to get involved in certain things. But it's really a matter of knowing yourself, knowing what's important to you. Like if your priorities are extracurriculars, then you might use that time outside of the classroom in the library, investing in extracurriculars as opposed to like hobbies or exercising or something else. So there's some examples of the things that people get involved in. I was involved in a lot of clubs. I know that most schools have like interest groups for the different specialties. So like psychiatry interest group or plastic surgery interest group. There's like lots of teaching opportunities, mentorship, wellness, like a lot of schools have wellness committees. And then research. So research is the big question, right? Like, should I get involved in research? Do I have to? When should I do it? There really is no right answer. I will say, if you have your mind set on a really competitive specialty like dermatology, orthopedic surgery, plastic surgery, it is something you kind of want to start thinking about early on. But if you're not sure, and if you feel like, you really want to focus on your classes so you can get adjusted to med school and do well, then don't think about research. Just focus on doing well in your classes and maybe wait till the first summer after your first year or like after your first exam when you feel a little bit more like you can handle a little bit more besides studying. But you will have opportunities to do research through all of med school. Even if you feel like you only have the first year, like the summer after your first year, most of my research that I did in med school was my 3rd and 4th year. And I could take more questions about that at the end. Okay, so before we launch into the questions, some other things that came up on the question doc that I want to address. So the first thing is balancing being firm while in medical school. So I went to New York Medical College, which is a very like religious friendly school. It's kosher. We don't have class the first 2 years of the clinical curriculum and holidays. But at the same time, like I still had to ask for time off for Hagim in my third year. Um, and like I will say, I'm not probably the best person to talk about this, but like I have some pointers from my friends and colleagues who did encounter this. And the first thing is like connect as much as you can. If there are other people in your class who are religious, upperclassmen who kind of a year ahead of you, a few years ahead of you, that you can connect with and ask them kind of for advice about how to go about, like if you need to take an exam that's scheduled for Yontif for like leaving early on a Friday. I think the other piece of advice is like ask as early as possible. So like let's say you get your schedule and you see, okay, we have an exam on like the last day of Sukkot. Don't wait till 2 weeks before to email a professor and say, can I take the exam another day? As soon as you can, email. It makes you look more professional, and it'll just increase your chances of having a better outcome. Um, the next question, should I study before med school? My short answer is no. This point, most of you, if you're starting, you're probably starting pretty soon at this point because it's already July. But enjoy your time. Like you'll have plenty of time to study when you're in med school. But if you're a very anxious person and studying will alleviate the anxiety that you have in these before med school and make it, more relaxing for you, then go for it. Again, study techniques and resources I kind of touched on. Another thing is like everyone studies differently. So I didn't really like to study in groups. I found that like not a productive use of my time. Some people love studying in groups, or like I did a million practice questions. That's how I would study. While other people were very into like, I don't know, flashcards or Anki. So don't feel like just because you study a certain way means you're not going to do as well as your peers. It's really a matter of like knowing yourself and what works best for you. Okay, so that's it for my slides. So we left plenty of time for questions. Let me stop sharing.
I did want to comment, like,
Yeah.
I never did Anki. And maybe it's something bad, but like it's worked so far. So, you know, don't feel pressured that if something works for other people and like so many people that you're like, oh, well, this is not working out for me. I actually study better with using something else.
Yeah. I would make my own Anki cards, which people thought I was crazy for, but I didn't make 1,000 of them. I would make like 50 at a time. So our first question is, how do you find what decks to study from? So, a couple things. So there's something called Onking, Anking. You have to pay $5 a month for it now, I believe. But they have like this huge master deck for I think like the first 2 years of med school that people tend to study from, and it has like little subcategories for each subject. There's a way that you can like connect it back to your UWorld account and like connect the questions with the cards. Um, it's really easy to find on Reddit. I think you just Google Anking. Um, but some schools will also have like dedicated groups for Anki. Like I know at New York Med, there's a whole group for it. So like some of them will make their own cards. Um, but I would say like ask your peers what they're using. Use Anking if like you want if you want kind of like the standardized thing that everyone else does. Um, Yeah, or you can make your own cards, which takes a lot of time, but it really helps me actually learn the material if I was engaging with it while making the cards. Right. Anyone else have any other questions? Okay, so I guess I'll use this opportunity to talk a little bit more about research because I know that's something that people are always asking about. Um, so depending on the school you go to, your access to research will be different. If you're at a school with an academic medical center attached to it, so like think somewhere like Einstein has Montefiore, or New York Medical College has Westchester, or um, that kind of thing, it's going to be a lot easier for you to find that research. Um, and often, like, researchers are very keen to have medical students join them on projects, and it's pretty straightforward to kind of email people and kind of see what's going on. I think it is going to be harder if you're at a smaller school or like a school that's not as research heavy. Um, but I will say, like, don't freak out if you can't get research like your first year of med school. There's plenty of time for it. Plus, like um, a lot of specialties don't really care so much about it, like the less competitive specialties or even like the normal ones. What's it called? Don't really require it. So yeah, someone asked, how do med students get so many publications when they're so busy? So, okay, a lot of research isn't necessarily like, okay, I'm gonna run like a randomized controlled trial and then publish the results. There's a lot of types of research. Like I published a poster that all we have to do was like review a little bit of data about like demographics in certain fellowship programs, make it into a poster, and it was published. So like abstracts, which is just kind of like a little paragraph, posters are a lot easier to publish because they don't require you to write an entire paper. Also, like if you'll notice, a lot of publications have a lot of students on them. It's not just one. And like most publications that students have aren't like first author publications, meaning like they're not the first author, they're not the one who's kind of like spearheading the research. I think like your summer after the first year of med school for a lot of schools is still like the time that people will do a lot of their research. Like if you have 6 weeks off or even more, that's a good time. But you know, people do research through all of med school. So like a lot of people who have a lot of publications, it could be that, you know, they got them throughout all their 4 years, not just through in their first year, or it could be they have some from before med school. And kind of like what I said before, like not every publication is like requires that much work. And for residency, I think it's kind of like quality over quantity. You know, you could have your name on a million posters, but then if someone asks you about them at a residency interview and you can't like meaningfully speak about it, that's not going to be as valuable as having 2 publications that, you know, you really were invested in and can speak about passionately. But again, like I would say try not to worry about it like your first few months at least, unless like there's something that you're really gung-ho about doing, or like a project that you have in mind. Someone asked, is it hard to make connections with professors in med school? So it depends on the size of your school. My school had about 200 people per class. But again, my first year of med school was in 2021, so it's a while ago now. And so it was still kind of COVID when all of our lectures were, they were in person, but they were recorded. So if you're one of those people who went to lecture, it was really easy to kind of talk to the professors afterwards. But even so, even if you didn't go to lectures a lot, like I didn't, a lot of schools have small groups, which is like, you know, instead of a big lecture, or in addition to the big lectures you'll have in a lecture hall, or like kind of some schools will have a flipped classroom where you watch the lectures online and then come into a smaller group with the professor and discuss cases or discuss the material. You still have small classes to get in contact with professors. I also felt that the professors in my school were a lot more invested in my success than the undergrad ones. You know, I very much got the sense when I took an undergrad science class that was like, you know, they don't really care if you pass or not, or if you make it to the end of the semester. You know, some of them will even brag and say, oh, half of you are not going to be here by the last lecture because you're going to like drop out or fail out or whatever. But in med school, like the goal is for everyone to get through, at least at like USMD schools or DO schools. So I really felt like the professors and the deans like cared about me and actually wanted me to succeed and do well, and like were a lot more available. So yeah, that's kind of the short answer to that question. Hannah asked, what are good ways for students to get an idea of which residency they would want to ultimately apply to? That's a really good question. Career exploration is a really difficult thing if you really don't know what you want to do. So, you know, a lot of people treat the 3rd year of medical school or your clinical rotations as like the best opportunity to figure out what you want to do. And that really is the case for the most part. Like when you're actually hands-on on a labor and delivery floor or on a surgery rotation or in an outpatient clinic, you really get a sense of, you know, what you want to do. But the problem is, like, let's say you want to do something competitive, like dermatology or plastic surgery, and you don't have the time to wait until 3rd year to start getting the ball rolling for research or other extracurricular activities. So it's going to involve a little bit of proactivity on your part. You can still shadow as a med student. You know, if you have some time in your 1st or 2nd year, you can always reach out to someone other at your school, like a professor at the hospital, or, you know, like through JOMA. Like you can always just kind of actively shadow and see. But networking is really important also, kind of just like asking around, asking people, finding mentors, kind of getting a sense of what those people do and if they like it, and asking a lot of questions. At the end of the day, choosing a specialty is not just about what you're interested in, but it's also about what's going to be a good fit for you and your lifestyle. So someone who doesn't want to, like you could love surgery and want to be a surgeon, but you could know that you're not a person who like wants a really intense residency program or wants a really intense lifestyle. So even though you love that, the subject of that specialty, the lifestyle might not be for you. So consider that as well as you explore your career, not just what you're interested in, but who you are as a person, what kind of life you want after medical school and residency, and how your specialty is going to fit with that. So another thing also is like by the end of your first year, you can kind of get a sense for how like let's say you really want to do plastic surgery, but you're not the best academically. Like that kind of will kind of give you an answer for yourself, right? Like as much as people can do anything they want after med school, for the most part, some of these more competitive specialties are really prohibitively competitive. So it's just important to be realistic as well. So what motivates you to study and how to stay focused for so long? That's a really good question. It's going to be different for everyone. But what motivated me was so my school is pass fail, but we do have rankings. So essentially how that works is like the first 2 years, when you get your transcript, it'll say like biochemistry pass, histology pass, but you're keeping track of your grades. And then later on, when you apply to residency, they kind of calculate all the grades together based on your performance the first 3 years and sort everyone into like quartiles or quintiles, so like the top 25%, etc. So I really wanted to be a competitive residency applicant. And it sucks that like much like undergrad, your motivation to study comes from just like, okay, well, how am I going to get into med school? Like, what's the next step? But for me, that's just what works, and that's what motivates me. And it's going to be like a matter of finding what motivates you. Some people might be really motivated to like learn because they want to like, I would say that like learning biochemistry really well and studying that well is not going to make you a better physician. But there are certain subjects that you feel like, oh, like I want to be a cardiologist. So it's really important for me to know cardiac physiology and pathology really well. And how to stay focused for so long, it's a really big challenge. I get distracted very easily. So I actually got this app called Stay Focused. I pay like $2 a month for it. And it like limits how long I can spend on certain apps. Your iPhones also have like a way to limit your time on certain apps. And it feels very childish to like give yourself these boundaries, but it actually is really helpful. So if you're someone who gets distracted, don't be afraid to, at some point on my iPad, I had an app that was specifically for kids so that they could only use certain apps, because like I would go on my iPad to study and then I'd be on YouTube. And it was kind of weird that I had a kids app on my iPad that was like controlling my activity, but it worked really, really well. So do what works for you. Like, don't worry about it seeming like weird or childish. Same for like taking breaks. Like if you have a method where you study for 20 minutes, then take a break for 5 minutes and that works for you, like do that. But again, it's going to be like some trial and error. Another thing that's actually really helpful is having a good work-life balance. Like let's say you have a wedding on Sunday and you're like, okay, I'm going to be at that wedding and I'm not going to study. Like I'm not going to do Anki on my phone while I'm at the wedding, but I have an exam on Monday or Tuesday. Like what motivated me was like, okay, well, like I'm going to finish all my studying by Saturday night so that Sunday is free. So like kind of giving yourself these deadlines or like putting aside time for something fun and like thinking, okay, I'm going to finish all my studying so I can go to this event or something like that. That helped me too. Also, people have study partners, which is, even if you don't study with someone, like it's always good to maybe have a friend to like keep you in check, like an accountability partner almost, like someone texting you, even if you're not studying together. Like I know some people find that really helpful to just have like another set of eyes on them almost to make sure that they're studying. Also, being in the library was very helpful for me. Like, if everyone else around me was studying, it was much easier for me to study there than it is like at home at my dining room table. Esther, if you want to chime in on this one, like how do you stay focused? What motivates you to study?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few because for me, it's the fit. There's a fear of failing. It's like a real fear. I can't describe it. It's like I failed my first exam in med school, and I'm not even I was crying every single day on the way back from school. I was like, it was like you're a mess, and you're just I failed by like 2 points, and it's like it was so stupid, and like. But I thought it was like maybe I'm not cut out for this, but it motivates you because you're like I don't want to have this feeling again. I want to like be like confident in myself. So that fear of failing really like puts the fear of God in you. So it like really like pushes you because you're like, no, I'm not getting distracted. I also would had breaks. I would watch like Modern Family in between. So what you were saying, like having some kind of something in between, because otherwise it's like too much. Like you can't look at like the heart all the time. It gets very exhausting and the physics of it is not so much fun. So you need some fun. But also there's a study that like even if you're not studying together out loud, just by I think they say like just by echoing, seeing other people study, that'll also motivate you to study. So I thought that's what my friends and I do. It doesn't work if you're yappers though. If you talk, like you have to like have a lot of self-control. That's where the fear has to come in. That's what my friend says
Yeah.
when I don't study. I'm like, she's like, you're not scared of failing. Like, you're not scared enough.
Yeah,
So,
I definitely agree. Like, it's nice to be around friends, but like that's why it's nice to be in the library because you can't really talk that much. Like if I was in a study room with my friends, like nothing was getting done. But at least like if we were in the library next to each other, and like it's so annoying when you're in the library and people whisper. It's like more annoying than them just talking out loud. Um, yeah, and another good point that you brought up is like imposter syndrome is going to be a real thing for a lot of people. You know, people who get into med school, like you are, like you have, or like you in the future are like highly qualified individuals, and you might get there and say, like, I'm supposed to be here, like I'm not as smart as all these people, but like you did it, you got in, they chose you, and you're just as qualified as everyone else there. Um, and I also always tell people like, um, getting into medical school is the hardest part. At least I found like the MCAT. I've taken all the step exams, not the step three, because there's 3 steps or levels. You take the first 2 in med school, you take the last one in residency. I haven't taken that one yet. I haven't taken boards yet. But the MCAT is the most difficult exam I've ever taken. So if you haven't taken it yet, I don't mean to scare you, but if you have taken it, and you're going into med school and you're worried about exams, I have not encountered an exam as difficult as that one so far. I don't know if you, Esther, if you disagree, but
man,
like,
you're scaring people.
no, I know, but just the sheer
It's
volume
the
of,
fear. It's the
yeah,
fear. But you could take it again. That's why I wasn't so
exactly.
scared
Yeah,
about the MCAT, and why I was scared more about step 2, which I'm waiting
yeah,
for my score. So yeah, that's not fun. But um
right. But it's also not as like step two, which is the like again, that's the exam you take after your third year, like before you apply to residency. It is important, but like residency programs don't care as much about step scores as medical schools do about MCATs. Like they do care, but I feel like it's not as, I don't know. I feel like it's not
it's not
as
as defining.
it
It's like if you don't
exactly
have a score, then you can't apply here and there.
right.
Which is I don't know. I think it's a little, I mean, it is what it is. That's how the story is. That's how they're able to filter out applicants. But, you know,
Yeah.
that same MCAT studiousness you could carry
Yeah.
into med school.
I also will say, something that really got me through med school was like at the end of the day, obviously, like, you need to pass, you need to get through med school, but like you're you're gonna be a doctor, and like that just kind of I would always try to remind myself of that when it got difficult. Like I made it this far. Like I would kind of even now in residency or like when I was applying to residency, it's like, okay, like I made it this far. This is hard, but like I know that I can get through it because I got through this thing or that thing. And sometimes for med school, people just kind of, like I said, get hit by a ton of bricks, and it's very different and much harder than anything they've ever encountered. But like, it's doable. Like most people graduate med school. Like USMD schools and DO schools have pretty low dropout and attrition rates because like they believed in you and the school accepted you because they believed that you could get through the program. Like they don't accept people who they don't think have the skills and ability to get through the program.
That's true.
So Hannah asked, for residency, aside from passing, what are the things that most set applicants apart, like research and letter of recommendation? So yeah, it depends on the specialty, right? So I know for psychiatry, that's the one I can talk about most obviously. They care about, you know, your human skills, right? Like, do they get along with people? Are they like a person that people are comfortable being around? But also, like, do they care about psychiatry? Do they have experiences on their application that show that they're dedicated to the field of psychiatry? Other other specialties, like I think care also like OBGYN, you know, they want to see like research in OBGYN or like experiences that show that like you have a dedicated interest in the field. But letters are very important. You know, you don't know this yet, but like it's not about having a letter of recommendation, it's about having a strong letter of recommendation for residency. So it's about quality, not just quantity. Also volunteer work. A lot of programs are very community focused. So if you're applying to like a primary care program or like an internal medicine program with a primary care track, it's important to have like experiences in volunteering in primary care or something like that. But at the end of the day, programs are looking for people whose values align with them and who they believe will be a good fit. And so, you know, if it's an intense program, they might want more like intense people. If it's a more like rural program, they want people who might fit better into that setting. So it really depends on the specialty, but it also really depends on the program at the end of the day. But the best thing you can do in the beginning of med school is do well in your classes. You don't have to do the things yet, but like think about what you're interested in and what you're passionate about that can translate into an experience or like a research project, that something that you can show on your application that you're interested in a certain subject. But again, like I wouldn't worry too much about that unless like you're gung-ho in dermatology or plastic surgery or ophthalmology. That's probably something you want to think about earlier and maybe get connected with a mentor earlier on. But other than that, I would say just really focus on, you know, doing well in classes and finding a study schedule or study routine that works well for you so that you can have those skills to get through all of med school and then keep doing well so that you can do well in staff and then, you know, get into or match at a program and specialty that I also want to say, just like some personal reflection as someone who matched into a residency, you're going to see a lot of people on social media, you know, talking about how they matched into their dream program and it's the best thing that ever happened to them. And like, they're going to be the kind of doctor they want to be in the place they want to be in the program they want to be. Like keep in mind that like for every person you see that matched into their top program, there's a person that didn't match at all or that didn't match into their top program or even their top specialty. And that's a good lesson for all of med school is like everything you see on social media, like take with a grain of salt. I don't know if you guys follow him, but like Dr. Paul Tran on Instagram posted something today actually about how like, you know, when people post things on Instagram in med school and like you'll have classmates who will post things or like these med student influencers, like you're really only seeing like the tip of the iceberg. So, you know, you're falling apart and it seems like your classmate is like living their best life and getting all these publications, but like you really don't know what's going on. So that's something I think that's something like I kind of wish I had kept in mind more through med school. You can see with Reddit, you know, I'm sure you guys all know that Reddit is a student doctor network from like applying to med school. And it exists for med school too, but like take everything you see on the internet with a grain of salt. If you have questions, try to ask someone you know and trust first before going to the internet. And it's good to like have, I guess, good internet literacy or media literacy because, you know, you don't want to trust everything you see online. Any other questions?
Also, don't worry so much about matching. Like, you'll be fine. Like,
Yeah. Also,
you know,
like,
like there's
yeah,
such
you
a
haven't even
small
started med school yet.
percentage of people that
Yeah.
don't match. And like, you know, there's a reason that they didn't match. Like, you'll be fine.
Mhm.
Amir Hashem, like, you know,
Yeah.
God willing. Like, yeah, I mean, maybe it won't match into plastic surgery, but like, don't worry, the life doesn't end and begin with
Exactly.
plastic surgery.
Exactly.
No offense.
And
I
I think,
mean, good if it's a good goal to have, but if somebody
right.
doesn't match, it's not the end of the world.
I think also like it's very easy to define yourself based on your medical career. Even before you are a doctor, it's like, you know, my entire identity is being a medical student or being a doctor. But like don't lose track of like who you are as a person, what was important to you before medical school, because like, you know, even if it feels like you don't have time for the things you like in med school, you will have time for them eventually. And like, you know, you want to have interesting things about you, or like you want to have values besides the ones that you just apply in medical school. What do people do if they match to residency they aren't happy with? Okay, so quick thing about match. The match is a legally binding process. So a quick thing of how it works: you apply to a certain amount of programs, you interview at those programs, and then you make a rank list. You submit that rank list, they run an algorithm, like you submit a rank list of your programs, the programs submit a rank list of the applicants, it runs an algorithm and matches everyone up based on preferences, and you get a result. If you match, you are legally, like, you're essentially, you don't actually sign the contracts, you start your job and like get you on board. But like you can't just like say, oh, you know, I matched with this program, but like I'm not happy, I'm gonna reapply next year. Like you you kind of have to go to that program. And like it's not worth like, I guess I'm not really sure how to word it, but like it's very different from med school or anything else you've applied to, like jobs. And you'll find out more about this much down the road. But like if you match, you kind of go where you match. And if you don't match, either you reapply or you find a position that hasn't been filled yet. But yeah, you only really reapply if you don't match, if that makes sense. You can't like match and then reapply unless you're like applying to a totally different specialty, like a year later or something like that.
Some people switch later during residency, but
Yeah.
that's like a different story. Like that's
Yeah,
like, yeah.
you can't like switch like when you grad, like you can't like match in March and then switch in May, like unless it's a very like you have to like you'd have to it's like a legally binding thing. Like you can't really just get out of it. Um okay, anything else? Um okay, have you faced any anti-Semitism from fellow classmates? Um I haven't. I went to like a technically Jewish school with a lot of Jewish classmates, but like most of the class wasn't Jewish. I personally never faced any issues. I don't want to like inject my own political views into the question, but um, I think honestly, I think if you're gonna face anti-Semitism in med school, I feel like it's more likely gonna be from people like not letting you take exams, or like not being accommodating. But also I want to qualify, just because someone can't accommodate your religion doesn't make them anti-Semitic. Like, you know, you can't always expect someone to like bend over backwards for you and then call them anti-Semitic if they can't accommodate that. Um, like I haven't, but um it definitely exists. I don't know how much it actually exists versus how much it's overblown. Um, but yeah, I can't really speak about that. But the best way to deal with it probably is like to know before you go, like what resources your school has for these kinds of things. So like pay attention at orientation when they talk about like we have something called like pair reporting, which is when you report like discrimination or like things that make you uncomfortable. We have like a special committee. So I would say like before you even encounter it, it's just something you're worried about, like kind of like look for the nearest exit. Like before you even have to evacuate, like know where you're gonna evacuate. So before you have to report something, like know what your options are, like know who you can trust. Um, yeah. When did you start studying for step one? I started studying, so we had a full 2-year preclinical curriculum, meaning we started in July or August. And then we took step one 2 years later in like June. So I started studying like during second year. Like I would just slowly incorporate UWorld questions into my daily study routine. So like I would add some biochem in there because I hadn't studied it for a few months, or some anatomy. Um, just because I am when it comes to studying, time is very helpful to me. Like I'm not like space repetition I like, because like if I have something over a larger amount of time, it's more helpful to me than like more concentrated studying over a shorter amount of time. But it depends on your school, like how long you have to study, like how much preclinical time you have before step one. Esther, when did you start studying for step one or level one?
I feel like around March maybe, and then like we were given April maybe, April and May, and then June. But like I started actually in March and February, just like doing questions myself, like 40 questions a day maybe, and that like helps when it actually when you have dedicated, it makes it a little less. It's like, oh, I'm already like 40% of the way done. UWorld.
Yeah.
Yeah, incorporating UWorld questions into,
Mhm.
you're gonna learn about the kidney, so just do kidney questions, even if it's like harder than your exam or whatever, or it's not like the same thing that you're learning, but just doesn't hurt to do an extra 20 or 10. It, but I wouldn't start like too early, because there were some people that started in the beginning of the year of second year, and it's just you're gonna forget everything. It's not like fresh in your brain. I don't know. That
Yeah,
to
some people
me,
will have like their Anki cards. They'll just like keep reviewing them and like keep them in their decks
mhm.
for like, I don't know, but it depends. But I think like, yeah, like somewhere in the middle to end of your second year, or like to the end of the preclinical curriculum is probably like a normal time.
It's also funny because like in step like for step two, one and two, it's like we take so much dedicated time to study, but like from what I hear from the interns, not the interns, but like the residents that are like second or fourth year, third or fourth, they're like, oh yeah, like I just took I studied for a week for step three and I got like a good score. And I'm like, so it's funny. It's like because that's what actually practicing medicine does to you. Like
Exactly.
when you do it, you know it, so there's different
Um,
ones.
Rebecca asked, are there any items you really recommend buying? So in my school, there's like iPad culture, as I call it. Like everyone has an iPad. I love my iPad because like it let me like annotate on PowerPoints, like take notes on that. And also like I'm a very visual person. And so when I study, I like to like draw things out. Um, yeah. Esther has her pen, her Apple Pencil. So listen, you can get by without it. A lot of my classmates didn't have that, but it's like I think it's like a good thing to have. Like I used it all. I mean, I haven't really used it now, but like all 3 years of the first 3 years of med school. Um, any other items? I wouldn't buy any books till you get to school and kind of see like, are you more of a physical book person or like a PDF, like you study on your like have the on your Google Drive or iPad or whatever. Um, and so yeah, I don't think there's anything I recommend buying like besides an iPad if you want that.
You
I
get the
don't think what else.
first aid maybe.
Oh
That
yeah.
book.
Um, the first aid for step one is this like big book that kind of has everything you need to know for step one. Um, I wouldn't say you need that right away though. I feel like you can kind of get it like in the middle of
Yeah, you
first or
don't need it
second.
right away.
Yeah. Any biographies written about doctors that you found interesting to read? Um, I I am a big reader, but I don't love nonfiction. And like sometimes like what I found is like I couldn't really read or watch anything medical in med school because it's like when I'm watching TV or moving, like the last thing, even now, like I don't want to watch like Scrubs or The Pit because it's like, okay, I don't want to think about being in a hospital. I'm not in the hospital. But my favorite medical book is called Hidden Valley Road. it's a psych book because I love psych, but it's about like schizophrenia and a family with schizophrenia. And the other recommended reading, it's more if you like fiction, it's called House of God. It's just like a really funny book about what it's like to be an intern. It was written in the 70s. But those aren't books you're necessarily gonna like learn much, but I just found them really interesting. Well, you're gonna learn a lot from Hidden Valley. Or House of God is more just like an interesting read.
There's a really good book. It's called The Emperor of All Maladies. It's basically like a biography of cancer. And a hematologist showed it to me and recommended it to me. And it's like, it makes you like want to read it. It's so exciting. It's just, you feel like you're reading like, I don't even know, like a biopic that's like action paced. It's so good. I think like everyone should read it. It's so good.
Definitely heard of it. It's on my list of like books that I'll eventually get around to.
It's I mean, I'm in middle of it, but it's just so good. It's like it reads very fast.
Yeah.
So it's worth it.
Another question, what study materials do you use to study the first 2 years? So yes, it's Anki and lecture slides, but a few of my other favorite resources. So like Sketchy, which I'm sure you'll hear about a lot, which is good for like microbiology and pharmacology. There's something called Osmosis. I'm a very visual person, and so I love like their visual. I'll put these all in the chat. Um, they have like really good visuals. Like you'll hear your second year about Pathoma, who's like the pathology guy, but like I found his lectures and videos really boring. Same with Boards and Beyond. It's another website. Some people love Boards and Beyond. I found the videos to be really just not engaging. And then Ninja Nerd, who's on YouTube. He's a really great educator and teacher. Just writing this out. Okay, and then for biochem, this is all coming back to me. AK lecture, that was obsessed with him. Trying to think what else I'm missing here. I mean, then there's UWorld. What's the other one called?
Amboss?
Amboss. These are things you can all look into. For the first 2 years, I would say probably like Ninja Nerd. Ninja Nerd's free. They're just YouTube videos. I don't know why I wrote Force and on Ninja Games. Been a long day. Okay. These are probably the top ones I use. So UWorld is 4-step, but like at some point, like the pathology that you learn in your lectures and the pathology that is on step is gonna do like a little Venn diagram is gonna overlap. Like, so they're gonna have questions about like different kinds of leukemia, which will be helpful for step, but also maybe helpful for your lectures and your in-house exams. So I would say like you don't really need to get UWorld the first like block, like if you're just doing like anatomy or that kind of thing. Yeah, I think that's everything I used. Yeah. Anyone else have any final questions? Right, I'm gonna drop my email in the chat. Please feel free to email me if you have any questions about getting into med school, anything beyond. I've done a lot of mentoring and teaching, so I'm always happy to help other people with all the stuff that I've learned along the way. Become curious. It's still weird being addressed as doctor. Yeah, anything else?
Thank you so much.
No problem. I wish you all the best of luck getting in or starting. It's exciting. It's going to be great. It's a lot more fun also than undergrad, at least. I don't know. Maybe I just didn't like my pre-med undergrad experience, but
It's funner. You make
yeah,
friends and
yeah.
it's
And
like
not, I don't know, like in my school, like not everyone's out to get each other. Like, I don't know, everyone's like helpful and nice, at least in my experience. So,
yeah.
okay. Well, best of luck, everyone. Have a great night.
Thank
Well,
you
good
so
night.
much. Have a good night.